Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets put game number 2 of the preseason in the books, taking care of the Washington Wizards with ease. What did we see from the veterans in the starting five? We break it all down coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marmbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And Doug, hey, there's a risk here for the Brooklyn Nets of blowing their lottery odds. What if they play the Washington Wizards 82 times this year? A fun game, a good game, and a bigger sample size for the Nets heading towards the regular season on their starters.
The tank is officially off after this game. Like, we just call it off, baby.
Baby.
We're blowing the doors off of other NBA teams here. 131 in the preseason without breaking a sweat. I mean, this. What are we doing here? Let's think about the playoffs. Like, they're not gonna be able to tank. They're just too all the Nets bros who have been lamenting that this team is not going to be bad enough to tank, that they just they're going to be sneaky good. This game did everything to confirm those worst suspicions about the team, or buoy your hopes that it's actually going to be a competitive season. I don't think we think that is at any risk here, but it is a pretty interesting thing. Not sure it's a testament to how good the Nets are, or about I've maybe even significantly underrated how awfully bad the Wizards are, who were without some key players. But anyway, 131-92, Nets win. Bunch of takeaways from this game that we'll cover over the next two episodes. But yeah, an interesting outcome here in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you said, do the Nets have the worst roster in the NBA? Oh, by far. Hey, hold my beverage, say the Washington Wizards as they come running in here. But it is funny because these teams, as we've talked about before, like, they are in similar spots here. They're both probably looking to lose a lot of basketball games this season. They both do have veteran talent on their roster who are not bad players by any stretch, but they are devalued players when you are not on a playoff level roster, a championship level roster, where your role is greatly reduced in support of other superstars, right? So from a Nets perspective, though, we come into this game, you don't get some of the players coming back off of injury. We'll talk about that more before the Wednesday night matchup that they'll have coming up here. Nicholas Claxton, obviously, among them. We keep holding our breath for Killian Hayes. No Keon Johnson in this one either. But the starting five is the veteran five. It's Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Dennis Schroeder, Ben Simmons again, and then Cam Thomas. And yes, Cam Thomas officially falls into the veteran category now because there's a separation not only between his role, but also the fact that he's just been on the roster for a handful more years than these other guys. We are starting to understand, I think, what we're getting into here with these players that are all living up to their back of their baseball cards, so to speak, when we talk about what our expectations are.
Yeah, look, Cam played pretty well here. 7 for 13, 2 for 4 from three. Had one of the misses. Well, there were two heat check kind of threes where he and Jordan Poole were, I'm going to put it in quotes, battling up and down the court on the scoring front. But and so one was like an ill-advised pull-up three. The other ones I thought were all good takes. So I'm almost like want to wipe that one away and say he was 2 for 3 from the field, but he took it. So 2 for 4, from three. And you just continue to see for Cam Thomas is what we're frankly going to see all season long, is that he's going to take tough shots. Like, he had a couple, like, at a turnaround baseline shot. He takes everyone that's watched Cam Thomas over the last couple of years has known that he just takes these wild, sort of like body turned in the weird way shots that just kind of end up going in a lot more than you would ever think they would. And also he looks kind of like bigger this year, not fat by any means, but just kind of thicker. But what we saw in this game tonight too is what I think a precursor for what we'll also see all season long is just that reminder that he just uses his body as good. Like, his body control is as good as I think almost like anybody in the NBA. When he gets to the rim and he's able to finish, one reason he's able to get to the line so much is because he's just not afraid to play with contact. He can hang in the air a little bit. He can contort his body to be able to get a shot. He shields guys and walls guys off really well when he gets close to the basket because he has like a lower frame that's really strong. And I just think that we're just going to see tons and tons of it this year. We always use a joke about like how Kyrie Irving could finish among the trees because he was able to just wizardry do stuff with the ball. Cam Thomas has a similar vibe, but he goes about it in a totally dissimilar way, right? He can finish around guys that are much bigger than him, but it's mostly because he understands like sort of the geometry so well of like where his body's located and where the defender is located, and then seals them off and gets the rim. So a lot of really encouraging stuff from him. Nothing surprising, but just another piece, I think, for Cam Thomas specifically that we're going to see all season long.
We spent a couple of seasons trying to get the Owl to be his nickname, because he's always turning his head around, all these different shots. But maybe the Contortionist, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but that might be a little bit more apt for Cam Thomas.
No. Hold on. I'm going to pause you right here. Yeah. We're not. It's the Owl. Okay. Owl's the line. When we get a bunch of ideas, like to quote George Costanza, we get a bunch of ideas in here, and everyone just screws it up. No, Jerk Store's the line. Owl's the line. Owl's the line. We're going with Owl. We're not throwing in new nicknames. I'm still going every year, 3 times a year. I go back to the Owl to try to get that to stick. It hasn't yet, but I'm never gonna as long as I'm doing the podcast, I'm never giving up on the Owl.
I'm super excited to move the needle beyond two people that are in support of this nickname that we're trying to rally here. So the Owl had a good game, obviously gets towards the basket. And the one thing you mentioned about the Kyrie Irving comp, which isn't the 1-to-1 as you say, but the difference being, this is why watching Kyrie was always so great. When he would get contact, he had the ability to somehow extend the amount of time that he was in the air, right? Like he could afford to kind of get his legs out from underneath him, give you an extra half second to get the shot off. Whereas Cam Thomas, and we talk about this with even other players on the roster, like Ben Simmons over the seasons, when you go into the lane, he's looking for it, expecting it, and preparing for what the shot will look like once I take contact. And it's just such a different mentality when you're getting inside the paint to feel like this is a part of my shooting process on this particular play, not a byproduct of it or something that I'll need to adjust to once it happens. So it's, again, as you say, nothing new for Cam Thomas, but encouraging. I think the same way we talk about in Summer League, you want to see guys that really dominate. Well, you don't want to see any regression from players that you feel like you've already established what they are as an offensive player. Cam Thomas is that. He continued to show it off. I do look forward to the Poole Thomas back and forth during the regular season, potentially, as these guys get into some games. But overall, I think that Thomas, this isn't one of those ones where he dishes out a handful of assists and you get excited for how he's setting up teammates. It's one of those games where you go, 17 points in 24 minutes. That's also, and maybe the most dominant part of his game, his ability to score so effectively as he did in this one. The other player, obviously, coming out of this game is someone that, if I recall correctly, Doug Norrie dragged out to the graveyard and put into a plot, and then, left the epitaph on the stone there. And by the way, here's the big deal. I kind of signed off on it. Might be a problem. We'll talk about Ben Simmons, how he looked in this one, certainly a bit more effective than game number 1, and we'll do that coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Gametime. Look, there's nothing better than going to the game. Like, you go into the NBA game, the sounds, the squeak of the shoes, it feels like you're part of the action. You go to an NHL game, forget about it. Like, you get there, the chill of the ice, fast everything's moving. Probably hockey, I know it's an NBA podcast, but hockey probably no better live sport, I would say, probably, or like huge upgrade from like the TV experience to the live experience there than hockey. And this is where Gametime is going to get you started, because they have all the tickets that you need, the prices you want. You're not going to find better deals than Gametime. They got the Gametime picks to make getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Look, you live in the New York area. You got nothing but options here. You got Devils tickets starting at $15, Rangers tickets, Islanders tickets. It's all there for you over on Gametime. Nets right around the corner. Knicks right around the corner as well. They have the super deals. They have tier deals, and you're just going to be able to get the perfect ticket buying experience that you just really need. See those seat views before you sit down. You get the lowest price guarantee. You're going to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about preseason game number 2 for the Brooklyn Nets. They get the win. They're 500. Project that forward. That means this is a 41 win team going into the NBA season ahead. So something to keep your eyes on here as we work our way through the preseason. Other players in that starting lineup that you may be familiar with. One, Ben Simmons, 13 minutes of action, 5 of 7 from the field, knocked down 50% from the line, 1 of 2. Also had 3 rebounds kicked in there and a couple of assists. But maybe most importantly, obviously in the eye test category, Ben Simmons in transition, getting into the paint, working towards it, hit a floater at one point in this as well. Did absorb some contact. Certainly a different look than preseason game number 1. While I know it's not dramatically going to change either of our opinions in totality on him, there was at least some sense of game 1, knocking off some rust, getting the legs underneath you. This was better for him by whatever benchmark you want to set.
Oh, better. I mean, it was like a different player. Okay, I got a quick question for you. I did not ask you this ahead of time. Last year in the games he played, what do you think the most? He took 7 shots in this game. What in 13 minutes? What do you think the most shots Ben Simmons took in a game all of last year was? He took 7 in this one in 13 minutes.
4.
Oh, geez, that's a terrible guess. That's like guessing with my wife. It's always horrible. Like just some way off guess. It's 8. You're supposed to guess something like you're supposed to guess like 8. Okay, and then I was going to say, yeah, good guess.
Hold on a second here. Hold
4.
on a second. Pause the podcast. But I mean, keep recording. When you pose a question like he took 7 shots in this game, oh my God, 7 shots, and then you ask the most
played 13 minutes
ago, the contrast is supposed to be stark here, Doug. Not one off. 8 to 7. Good Lord, please continue.
Okay, well, either way, so that got submarined. Either way, last year the most shots he had. So Ben Simmons last year, the most shots he took in a game all last year was 8 shots, right? Like, and that was when he played like 33 minutes. He averaged 4.9 shots in 24 minutes a game last year. 4.9 shots in 24 minutes a game. This year, he took 3 in this game. He took 3 shots in the first 2 possessions.
Yes.
Right. So he took the first possession. He turned the corner on Bagley and got to the rim and scored. Second possession, he turned the corner again, did not score. Took kind of a wild shot, but they got the offensive rebound. They kicked it back out. He got it foul line extended, and he actually took it to the basket again and did score. And so that I thought was really interesting in the sort of aggression category, because we just really hadn't seen it. Again, 4.9 shots last year in 24 minutes a game, 7 shots in 13 minutes. It's the Wizards, fine, whatever. But this is the only way it works for him this year. The only way is that he does this and he gets more and more comfortable. He gets downhill. This is what when we tossed dirt on the grave of last game is because he just didn't do this at all. Like he had Zoo on him and he just wouldn't try to blow past him. He had Kevin Porter in the dunker spot and he just couldn't go up and finish over him. Like if you can't do that, then he's dust. But if he's going to take it to the rim against guys like Bagley, who are just slow-footed, and you have him just up at the foul line, and you don't have any weak side rim protection, you have to go. You have to go as hard as you can. Still probably isn't finishing at the rim as aggressively as I want, but I can't knock him. I mean, this was a totally different guy. Again, three shots in the first 2 possessions is just a different guy. So really, really encouraging line from him. Really encouraging overall showing, mostly on that piece, because we've always said that is the most important part. Is he confident trying to get to the rim and finishing either past guys who are slower or over guys who are smaller with his athleticism? That's the key, I think.
No, 100%. And by the way, 4.9 shots over 24 plus minutes. That's a good guess on my part. I feel like just seems like
that's the average, pal. That's the average. You guessed.
So right there. But, and listen. Okay. Was the average germane to the question I was asked? Probably not. But we're just trying to go ahead and muddy the facts here a little bit on our way out the door. Now, the other thing that I think is noteworthy, not to water down the good performance from Ben Simmons, but as you mentioned, plays against Zoo against the Clippers, and it doesn't look quite the same. There is this version of it when you look at the Wizards lineup and you say, well, there is a difference going against Bagley, the third, versus going against a larger, bigger center. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that I think it'll be interesting to watch as we get towards the regular season, matchup dependent aggression from Ben Simmons, right? When he looks across the court and he says, oh, slighter frame, not as big a body, I'm more willing to go into that contact. Now, again, if we ever start to fully believe the hype around the health, that is going to change the way that he looks on the court. We've always said, you hear he's 100% healthy, and then you don't see him attack at the basket, and that usually tells you that he's either not 100% healthy or he's not 100% confident in what he's capable of doing. This is the first sample size in the right direction of matchup you can win, matchup you should be able to dictate a little bit on the offensive end, go after and get it. Now the question will be, can you do it again the next game and the next game and then into the regular season, right? But as with any player, good sample size is a good sample size, and it was a good sample from Ben Simmons in this one. Certainly showed the areas you mentioned. We know about the facilitating. We know about pushing the pace, setting up other guys. This is the thing you need to do if you want to be effective on a night in, night out basis this season.
Just has to be willing to do it. That's all that's really all we've said from the beginning, is just be willing to do it. We've actually said many times, be willing to do it and have it look bad. Right? Like just go have it look bad. That's fine. Nobody cares. We've been preaching that forever, is that it's okay to have it look not perfect. It's the only way to get it to look better, right? Is to try. When you don't do it, you'll just it's never going to happen. So we've really just, the frustration we felt at times with Simmons from an outsider point of view, just like on the podcast, watching games and analysis and whatnot, is that the unwillingness to do these things that made him great. The things that made him great when he was with Philly was just like super aggro toward the rim, because he couldn't shoot. Everyone knew it, and it kind of didn't matter, right? Like when he was really firing on all cylinders with Philly, then when he was firing all cylinders there, it was because everyone knew that he couldn't shoot the ball, but he would still completely dust these defenders. If you tried to lay off him, he would get ahead of steam and he would get to the rim. If you tried to get close to him, he would either get past you and then find an open shooter when the weak side help came, right, which he was awesome at, or he would just get all the way to the rim, and he wouldn't be able to take free throws, but it kind of like didn't matter. And that's just like what we've never seen that. Like, you want to say it's injury, you want to see it's, sort of like the mental piece, whatever it is. I'm not sure, but we just have not seen that consistently since he got here.
Yeah. And
it's just the key to making it work, because he's never going to be able to shoot. Fine, no problem. That we've made our peace with that. But if he can do this other part, it is a floor raiser considerably.
Well, it's when you talk about, obviously, the sample size. It takes 7 shots in this game. Over the course of his career, early days with Philly, he was taking basically 12, a little bit over per game, and it only descends over the course of his career.
All at the rim. Sorry to interrupt you. All at the rim. Like, all those shots are at the rim. Maybe some floaters.
This isn't a blend of mid-range and taking a couple of outside looks. This is all attacking, getting downhill, putting pressure on the defense.
That's what I'm saying. It's like that. Those stats are all at the rim. The shot chart is all at the rim, and so it doesn't take much to do the math here. When the at the rim stops, it all stops.
Well, and by the way, too, it's like he's never been a good free throw shooter, but it is just noteworthy that, like, his best free throw shooting days were early in his career when he was getting to the line and averaging those games 4 or 5 times a game over the first 4 seasons of his career. Like, he's never going to be great when he gets there, but at the same time, if you only go to the line once or twice a game, well, then a bad free throw shooter is probably going to trend on the bad side. I'm always going to try to use the law of more chances means I get a better opportunity to put some in. He knocks down 1 or 2 of those. If he can get, to your point, 7 attempts in this game, listen, just tell me that you can commit to, after playing and only having 5.5 attempts per game in 2022-23 with the Nets, and then those limited action last year under 5, get me towards 7 or 8 shots, even in a total minute share. I know we're getting excited over the smaller minutes and then what it can extrapolate to. I don't care. Give me 7 shots over 24 minutes this season, and that would be an improvement and continue to get to the line. So good showing from Ben Simmons. And if nothing, we continue to say we want him to play well. We want him to look good. We want him to be healthy. And it's good to see a sample size that suggests maybe he's trending more in that direction. Coming up here, though, there's also another veteran inside of this starting lineup, and one Dennis Schroeder, who certainly knows what it means to take over the facilitator role in a game like this. We'll dive into that and the other starters to close out today's episode coming up next.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. You get NFL season's in mid-swing here. NBA season right around the corner. You can get a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. You may be getting a hunch in the middle of the game. You're going to check out the latest stats. You're going to check out the play-by-play. So much more. It's going to be right there on the same page that you place your bets. FanDuel's got you covered. Full stack betting experience right there, folks, with FanDuel. You get the futures going on here, too. You can bet Cam Thomas. I think he's 8th overall right now and to lead the league in scoring. Maybe you want to go over on the Nets 18.5 win total after you watch that Wizards game. Get that on FanDuel as well. You're also going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 real money bet. Once again, that's $200 in bonus bets with a $5 real money bet over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, so as we close out today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the Brooklyn Nets getting their first win of the preseason over the lowly Washington Wizards, but they all count, or they don't count. It's the preseason, but the sample sizes certainly matter here. We talk about the starting five. Obviously, Cam Thomas doing the scoring, Ben Simmons positive, attacking at the basket in this game, and then Dennis Schroeder. Listen, 25 minutes, 4 of 8, knocks down one triple, gets to the line 4 times in this game, but dishes out 7 assists. And I thought some of the ways in which that he was setting up others, including Cam Thomas, looked like a progressive approach from Jordi Fernandez on how you want the offense to flow when it's not just getting out in transition. He even had a little 2-man game with Ben Simmons at one point that led to Ben Simmons getting at the basket. I like this version of it, and I don't hate the idea of creating more pure point guard opportunities for Schroeder and saying Ben Simmons at times you got to play off of that and use the aggression. So there is a little bit of a follow through here on what Ben did and then how maybe that can function more consistently going into the season.
Yeah, it's not like a super clean fit with him and Simmons.
No,
The Nets don't have
never
super
is
clean
with Ben
fits.
Simmons.
Yeah, they don't have super clean fits across the board. He's not a super clean fit with Cam Thomas. Like, so it's not, that's just not a Ben Simmons thing. Like, yeah, Schroeder and Cam Thomas, I don't think really complement each other very well either. I don't think if you were drawing this up in a lab, you would really want them playing together also. So it's not even like an anti-Simmons thing. It's just that the Nets just don't have clean fits across the board, specifically in the backcourt. Their guards are just underwhelming this year. And I don't really think that Ben Simmons is going to play like this pure point guard role. We do see him bringing the ball up at times. They do want to initiate actions with the DHO. But with Schroeder, he just is more of the pure point guard type, right? High pick and roll, right? Getting to the rim. He can finish the basket too. The 3-point shooting is just good enough for him typically. And so I think overall, he's more the guy that I want to see. Like when Nick Claxton comes back, let's say, Schroeder's more the guy that I want to see on the court. Like that 2-man game is much more potent than a Simmons. And then I want to see more Cam Thomas with Ben Simmons, right? Like I want to see Cam Thomas with everybody, but those are the pairings that are a little cleaner and make a little more sense, right? How the run out goes with who's on the team and whatnot over the course of the year, it's hard to know. I do think with Schroeder, I mean, I will say for Schroeder, of all the guys on the team, he's probably most essential from can we roster a functional basketball team? Like he probably is the most important because he's the only guy. Him and Cam Thomas are really the only guy who can, for Thomas, score, like make their own shot and score. And Schroeder, who can run sort of just conventional pick and roll and defend just well enough and just do like typical basketball 101 point guard things. And I was actually thinking this during the game last night because Schroeder took a bad fall at one point on a drive to the rim. And I was like, man, if he gets hurt, like they got
the Nets. State of the Nets. Oh no, when he goes down.
I mean, I guess like
Shake
Milton's looked all right, and we'll talk a little bit more about these bench guys tomorrow.
Yeah,
but he took that fall, and I just thought, oof, man, if he gets hurt, they got nothing at point guard. Like in this kind of conventional point guard sense.
Yeah, and you would, and I mean, listen, whether the Ben Simmons of it all, the Cam Thomas, and the expansion of his game, but we know, I was thinking about the other veterans inside of this lineup, obviously last night with Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith. These are guys that are not going to be creating for themselves. Frankly, they're not going to do a ton of creating for others either. You know, by and large, they're going to be perimeter shooters and defensive-minded players. And you don't have, as we talked about all off season, but you don't have the guy you just automatically pull in. There's players that we're interested in. No Keon Johnson in this game. Obviously, we've enjoyed what he did at the end of last season, but nobody has the resume that Dennis Schroeder does. Like nobody has just, hey, I've done this for years. And at some point that becomes a little bit kind of, automation, right? Go ahead and set it up. Point guard, he'll go ahead. He'll get you into your sets. He'll try to give good looks for others. He'll take his shots when they're there. There's something about just checking certain boxes that at least right now, there's not a lot of other players that can do that for their roles and for their positions that expand beyond serving their own needs. I don't mean that negatively, but like Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, you're not going to turn around and go, oh, Cam Johnson setting the table for others, had 7 assists the other night. Like it's just not going to be a part of it. So you're right. And it is interesting to think about that in the season that we have ahead, how some of these veterans, you go, oh, we can't afford to lose them. Like even just that phrase in itself is an odd one to have, or a sentiment to have going into a year when the Nets have an 18.5 over-under win total projection. Can't afford to lose these guys, but it does matter to have functional offensive sets and the ability to trust someone to execute.
Look, sometimes you just need organization, right? We talked about this for a long time with the Nets. During the KD Kyrie era, we talked about how the Nets desperately needed.
We refer to KD historically.
They needed an organizer, right? You have these generational scorers, but you had a guy, and they needed someone to sort of organize the offense. Boom, yep. James Harden comes in, and the team is absolutely just destroys people in that short period of time. And it's like, oh, can they play defense? It's like, who cares? Who cares? Because they just didn't even need to. And they actually kind of could a little bit, but it wouldn't even matter. Sometimes you just need someone with these other guys to organize an offense and be able to calm things down, see the court, again, run pick and roll when you need to be able to space the floor, get guys, be able to punish defenders a little bit so that you can, beat your primary defender so that you can start the ball moving. These little things that need to happen. And, you're looking at like the Suns, right? It's like, okay, hey, we need let's get Tyus Jones in here. We need someone to organize this offense a little bit so that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal can just cook, and it's going to work, right? And so that's how I kind of see a Schroeder. Is he this exceptional point guard? No, but he's well above average, and he just can organize in a way that a lot of these other guys, they just don't really have anyone else on the offense that can. So, that's probably his best gift to be on the team. It's what's made him. It's what's put him in the league for this long, right? He's not exactly huge. He's not exactly the fastest. He's not exactly the best shooter, but he's good enough at everything, and he does understand. That's why he's good at the international level too. Like great at the international level is because he understands this sort of organizational aspect of basketball. And I just hope he doesn't get hurt because it might really look ugly if he does.
Reliable and consistent. I mean, that's what you want from guys in these types of roles across the NBA. The Nets have that, obviously, in him. Last note here that I will say, we focused on, we'll talk about the rookies, young players, the bench, focused on the starters, obviously, today before next Wednesday's preseason game. But when you look at the other two starters, there's been like more of a springiness, I'm going to say, to Dorian Finney-Smith and his overall play. Like he looks a little bit re-energized in some ways. There's been some talk about whether or not he was dealing with some minor and small injuries throughout last season that made him look a little bit older, even though he is in the over 30 category. However, he's just 2 of 8 from beyond the arc in these first 2 preseason games. You have Cam Johnson, who's just 3 of 10 from beyond the arc. Again, over the course of it, everyone, ends up falling back to their mean, and it's all good. The law of average is great. However, if we're just talking about things to watch, it'd be better if these 2 veteran players that the Nets may want to entertain trading at some point, I always prefer if they're knocking down more. I like it when they're scoring more, when the percentages are higher, and they look better. I think their overall games, again, haven't been terrible. Out of the 2, I think Cam Johnson's actually been the more concerning, but perimeter shooting would be nice to see here come around as you work your way through the back end of the preseason into the regular season for those 2 vets.
They're gonna need it if they want to score. It's really the only way. They're gonna be. The only way they're going to even hope to hang in games at this point is these guys have to shoot threes, which luckily at their, for their career, they've done really well. And so you would hope that it's just going to happen. But, Cam Thomas can only score so much, and these other guys can't really ball create. So at that point, you just have to hit your threes. Yep. And, that's going to fall a little bit on the guys like Clowney and Jalen Wilson, right? Who, by the way, 3 for 5 for those guys. We'll talk about them tomorrow. But so they have some other options here. But it does ultimately, though, when you're not like an on-ball wing creator, of which the Nets don't really have, you have to just hit those open threes. That guys like Simmons can get you. That guys like Schroeder can get you. And then at some point, hopefully Cam Thomas too. So I'm not too worried about that because they just have such a track record of being able to do such a long sample size. So not too worried there. But overall, really encouraging second game. We won't count the Clippers one because the NBA League Pass thing was such a mess that I'm not even going to count as having seen that one. So we'll just count this as the first.
Same policy for the regular season too.
Yeah, just every game's the first.
Doesn't come through clean.
We are going to be. We'll talk more about the guys, the bench, and the rotations, getting a little clearer sense of maybe like what and probably not even clear sense. I think we just kind of know what these rotations are going to be at this point going into the regular season. So we'll talk about that more tomorrow. Clowney, Wilson, Shake Milton, looks like he's probably carved out a role. All those guys. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube. And I will say too, we're going to have the link this week. We have a Nets preview that you're going to be able to get for free. Just an email address. That's all you're going to need. Check it out. It's going to be on WeGotNets.com. A little early, probably a day early on this, but if you want to just, keep refreshing over at WeGotNets.com, you're going to get a free 4-day preview of the Nets season. That's going to be WeGotNets.com.
The smaller the sample size, the more likely that it is unrepresentative of the wider population. Now, that's Michael Lewis, and that's the author of Moneyball.
One of the all-time great poets, Michael Lewis. Listen to his podcast now. You want another podcast? That's a good one, too. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.